order. You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man.
There have been 50,000 cases of child sex abuse in England reported to the authorities over the past couple of years. But the Children's Commissioner, Anne Longfield, says the real figure is much higher. And she's with me. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Says or estimates?
Well, estimates, but these figures and this data is renowned for being very incomplete. So what we've got this time is the most complete set of data that we believe gives the best evidence of the scale. So what we've done under powers that I have within this role is being able to get data from every police force in the country and also from the national statistics about children in need, and put those together and then apply a model which allows you to estimate what you don't know. It's what the model they used in calculating the numbers involved in modern slavery.
Right. It's a very clever mathematical formula that is accepted. All right.
Yeah.
So let's assume that this figure is accurate. How big? We're saying that you are saying that only 1 in 8 cases is reported. There's a huge difference there. In other words, we're talking about 450,000 cases over the last.
Yes, and about 2/3 of those are actually child sexual abuse within the family, which is the area I'm particularly looking at and talking about today.
And that's the important thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because most cases do happen, as you say, in the family.
That's right. It's the most prevalent area that it is. So, of course, we've had a lot of attention on child sexual exploitation following places like Rotherham over recent years, and that's been commendable. We've got the Goddard inquiry looking at child sexual abuse within institutions, and the area where it's most prevalent hasn't yet entered the national debate.
Isn't that because it's incredibly difficult to get at it?
That is exactly why. It's both very difficult to get at it. It's largely unseen and unknown about. But also, obviously, it's very difficult to talk about as well. But also for children, the reason most of it isn't known about is that children just don't disclose. So the 7 that don't, they're either frightened of the perpetrator, they feel intimidated. Sometimes they just don't know the words or what's happening to them. But also they really carry that burden of what will happen to the family if they tell someone. It's very, very complicated.
And this is a terribly difficult approach to take. I appreciate it. But will there be some children who have been abused but who haven't really been affected by that abuse? In other words, have we not got to differentiate between a serious case of abuse, and I know you would argue, and many people would argue that all abuse is abuse, and that's that, but there is a difference between rape and other things.
Children will all be affected in different ways. Right. I guess that's the thing. There'll be a scale and then they'll be affected in different ways. What we know is that the longer it goes on, the worse the impact will be.
Whatever the sort of abuse it is.
Well, it will be,
whether it's a sort of inappropriate cuddling or...
It will vary, and it'll also be, it would vary on the type of abuse, but also the resilience of the child and the relationships within there. But there will be a proportion of those children who have been abused that will carry those scars, which are physical and mental, right through adulthood. And alongside the data collection, we also have the largest survey of survivors, and what those survivors are telling us, often now in their 30s, 40s and 50s, is sometimes they don't tell for decades, often until a parent dies, so they feel able to. And, they then, recount the terrible struggle they've had in building relationships, holding down jobs, the reliance on public services and the like. So this is an underlying hidden issue, which my argument is we need to talk about.
And if the parents themselves, if the child, him or herself, is not reporting it, not disclosing it, and if nobody in the family is prepared to do so, then it comes down presumably to teachers and people they come into contact. Now, how do you get them, A, to recognise what's going on, and B, to tell us about it?
And this is the issue. How do you create the environment that children feel able to start talking about this? And then how do you get the professionals to the stage where they're able to recognise what that means and act on it?
Might they not recognise it even if the child doesn't talk? Will there be signs often?
There will be signs, and the well-recognised signs will be about mental health issues, issues, being withdrawn, sometimes physical issues and the like. But you will only know some of those, over-sexualised behaviour, some of those. You will only recognise some of those if you have stable relationships and ongoing, if you know the child. So if you know the child, you are able to notice when things are changing and able to get the kind of relationships in place to respond. So some of this is deeply simple. Have relationships with children that, with adults and professionals where you know them, be able to respond and see them through too.
Anne Longfield, thank you very much indeed, and we'll be talking to somebody who has been abused at 8:10. Many thanks. We know that many children are sexually abused and that most of the abuse takes place in the children's own homes. What we've never really known is how many. The official figures for the past couple of years show that about 50,000 cases were recorded. But the Children's Commissioner in England has done the sort of number crunching that's never been done before, and it shows a startling and deeply disturbing picture. It estimates that for every case that is reported, there are another 7 we never hear about, which means, obviously, that the abusers are never caught, and even more importantly, the children don't get the help they need. Let's talk to somebody who was herself abused as a child, Sue Crocombe. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
It began at the age of 4.
That's my earliest memory, yes.
And what happened? It was a family member who came into your house.
Yes.
And assaulted you when I think you were in a sort of cot and you had your hands tied because you were scratching yourself because of eczema.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was a sort of way to stop me really from scratching. That's my earliest memory. But this family member had access to me because he was a family member, and so it was quite acceptable for him to be around me and near me.
So he would untie your hands, he would abuse you and then untie your hands.
As a reward, if you like. Although obviously as a child I wouldn't have seen it that way. I just saw it as him caring for me because I didn't know what it was.
Well, of course, at the age of 4 you wouldn't have known there was anything wrong, presumably.
No, not at all. And it was, no abuse is small, but compared with how it progressed, you could argue that it was a small amount of abuse.
I see. So it became much more serious as time went on.
Yes.
And how long did it go on for?
Just before my 13th birthday.
Oh, so for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And there were clear signs that you had been abused. There were physical signs. You had an infection that presumably came from it.
Yeah, I mean, some children don't display any signs at all, and that's not necessarily reflective on how bad, can you say that?
Yes.
No abuse, no amount of abuse, how small, should be minimised. But it's not in relation to, people can be quite functional and they can have severe abuse. I've forgotten your question now.
No, well, you're answering the question. I was also going to ask you at this point about your mother, because she herself was emotionally, mentally disturbed, I think.
Yeah, and the problem is I was a vulnerable child, so I was needy, and I needed, as children do, they need care and affection and validation, and that she wasn't able to give me that.
But this man was.
But yes.
So you came to trust him, presumably, and did you feel warm towards him?
Yes, I have to say I loved him, and it for me it was a relationship as it developed, and for me it was something that I was doing with him. I never saw it that it was all his doing.
Was there a father there? Did you have a father?
Yes, but he wasn't around to notice what was happening to me.
And nobody else noticed? Obviously
We're talking in the 60s now, so this is even before the child line, even before it was even ever talked about. So yes. There wouldn't have been anyone. The signs for me were I got a lot of urine infections. I was quite a compliant child, so I did have outbursts of rage at school, but I wasn't a child that was so troublesome you had to sort of do something with me, with the authorities.
No, I take your point that there was no obvious sign, but nonetheless, when did you finally, indeed, did you actually report this man? Did you actually go to the...
No.
At no stage?
No.
Is he still out there?
No. In actual fact... the problem is, it was my secret. It was my terrible, guilty secret, and I shut the door on it as a young adult and tried to get on with my life. But what happened was, it comes back to haunt you. It never goes away. And so I was coping as an adult, not well, and then I went to have counselling eventually, and could see it as abuse. But then, by then, it was too late, and he's dead.
He's dead. But it wasn't too late for you in the sense that you have recovered, have you? I mean, I almost hesitate to use the word because presumably you never fully recover. But
I think you kind of, is a journey where you bit by bit, if you can have a measure of recovery. Definitely, yes.
Did you ever think of saying anything to anybody, a teacher perhaps at school?
No, because it was my secret. It was something that I was doing with him, getting rewarded. I wanted him to be around. I would never, even when I got older, as an older child, and kind of work things out, if I'd said anything, he might have got into trouble. I would have got into trouble. Goodness me, the whole world would have collapsed as far as I was concerned.
So it was easier just to let it carry on. And
yeah, and I was thinking about this yesterday. Would I ever have said anything? If someone had asked me, maybe as a child, where I was between the ages of 4 and 6, where you're not clever enough to kind of work out things, particularly. If someone had asked me, I might have innocently said something, whereas when I got a bit older, I was complicit. I kept the secret well.
But you don't think it was your fault, surely?
Oh, yes, even as an adult.
Really?
Yes,
but not now, not still.
It's taken counselling to see that I'm not at fault, but the shame and the guilt that you feel is huge, because you're doing it. You're doing it with them. It feels like I was so groomed that it was a normal thing, being sexualised at that age.
That in a sense is the real horror of it, isn't it? I mean, that's why it's so damaging.
It is. But I wanted to say that your children don't readily disclose of their own volition. And we need to be asking those questions when there are children who are displaying signs. There are many children display signs that not verbally, but they display signs of being difficult, wayward, or falling behind with schoolwork, truancy, maybe the quiet child becoming the opposite. Or a lively child
All
withdrawing, and rather than thinking, it's something that's happening at home, maybe a separation, or they're struggling at school, or
you should
other
ask
things.
Questions.
Let's think about that question. What is it? Is there something that's going on? Is it abuse as well?
And do you mind me asking if I know you have children of your own?
Yeah.
Have you ever been able to talk about it to them? And how do you now?
Yeah, they're
warn
grown
them,
up.
as it were.
No,
they're grown up now, of course.
They're grown up now, and I was emotionally such a wreck as an adult when I was parenting them for a little while that, I wouldn't have said anything. I never did the body safety with them at all. They do know that. Obviously, they do know that I've talked to them since as an adult, that things have happened to me. I mean, I speak quite publicly, so
right. And your message, just in a nutshell, your message is. Okay. Ask children questions.
Ask teachers, parents, if there's a gut feeling, parents, teachers, particularly parents, we're talking about parents here, because it can be a wife and the husband is abusing, and you just don't know. That's how, you think, how can that wife not know that her husband is abusing the child? Let's put it that way round. If there's a gut feeling, there's something not right. Just ask the question somehow or other. Get that question. If it's a teacher as well, ask the question, and don't just think they're naughty and punish them because of their behaviour. And the other thing is, people think it's scaremongering to talk about this, and to body safety. It's all scaremongering. Goodness me, I'd rather scaremonger than have a child traumatised for a lifetime because because of child sexual abuse.
Well, indeed. Thank you very, very much indeed for talking to us. And we do have on the line the headmaster of a school, Bourneside School in Cheltenham, Alan Foulds, who's also president of the Association of School and College Leaders. And you'll have heard what Sue Crocombe said there, Mr. Foulds. What is, as a head teacher, what is your approach to this? How do you talk to your teachers about it and tell them to do what Sue Crocombe said must be done?
Well, indeed, and schools have a pivotal role to play in this, John, and I think that to unlock an act in relation to the sort of secrets which Sue's described underpins all of the work of schools that are effective in this area, and I think she's absolutely right in terms of if there's a gut feeling to act on it. So teachers are effectively trained, regularly trained, and these signs that Sue was describing, teachers as professionals have to be keenly aware of all of these, and there's a whole range of possibilities, and if there's ever a shadow of doubt, then the issue of disclosure and how to handle that disclosure is vital. Now, it was interesting, the Commissioner saying that earlier that children don't disclose, that there are a lot of inhibitory factors, the need to overcome that fear and loyalty, intimidation, coercion.
And shame as well, because some of them will feel shame, won't they?
Hugely difficult, and yes. Nevertheless, children do disclose, and there needs to be a really, really effective environment and culture and absolutely clear tactics and strategy in a school to encourage that disclosure and to know how to work with it. And I think there's another side too, which is about raising awareness with young people and with parents. As I'm sure you know, sex and relationships education is compulsory in secondary schools, but we absolutely welcome a government task force looking at this and looking at the multi-agency approach that's necessary, but there may need to be thought put around that awareness raising for younger children, because we've heard just how young such dreadful things happened for Sue.
Do you worry at all that by talking about this in the wrong way, you might encourage worries that aren't real, that you might in some way create fear on the part of children?
I think with great care that won't happen. But even if that there may be some of that happening, better to actually make sure that the issue is tackled and to actually teach and take completely face on the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationships. And I think it's absolutely right that with great care and thought, that is part of the curriculum of children, and they are able to understand the occasions when they may need to disclose. And disclosure and awareness can be more broad than the victims themselves. I mean, Sue described how children can be withdrawn, there can be sudden changes in behaviour. These can be noticed by a whole range of people, including other friends of children. And if we're working together in an environment which recognises that these sorts of things absolutely need to be spoken about, right, we come back to the gut feeling. If there's a gut feeling, act on it would be the best thing.
Alan Foulds, thank you very much indeed. And let me just give you a couple of phone numbers in case you are concerned. And that is the NSPCC's helpline, and that's 0808 800 5000. And if you're 18, for children of 18 or under, Childline offers free advice, as you'll know, confidential advice on 0800 1111. We'll put those numbers on our website.